It was shaped like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind.
Come on. There it is. How are you, sir? Well, we're late for a good reason. We're 20 minutes late, maybe even more, but it's for a good reason. How was your how was Allie? Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad. Of of course. She's wow, she's a senior now. Jeez. I remember when she was crawling on your lap in the middle of recording sessions, man. Yeah. Yeah, I did. I did. I wanted to wait for Allison because she was cooking all morning and she didn't have time to watch. And then we went out all day went to see my brother Johnny and my family at his place, and then went to go have dinner with her son Adam and her son Brian and their ladies. And so by the time we got home, I was bursting at the seams to watch it, and it was great, man. I mean, it's yeah. It was great. I was there were moments. I mean, I don't know how if you when you get a chance to watch it, you've been in a band. There are just moments. It's like, wow, it's so like they were hard on each other, man. The way they spoke to each other, they were tough. Like at one point, they're playing "Get Back," and George is playing something that Paul doesn't like, and he goes, "That chord that you've sort of added, I don't know where it came from, but it's sort of passe, isn't it?" I thought, geez, those are fucking fighting words, man. In cowboy mouth, that would have been like, throw down, motherfucker. Call my shit passe. And then calling Johns across the universe corny. Like it's kind of corny, but if it's or no, don't let me down. It's corny, but corny sort of in a good way. I'm just thinking, bitch, call my shit corny. You wrote your mother should know. Well, he was, to his obvious credit, they were sort of rudderless without Brian Epstein. They met Brian when they were just boys, and he was sort of like a father figure. He told them what to do, and they did it. Put on suits, do the tours, make the record, and that was easy. They could be equals in the studio because they had the guy they could get pissed at, the daddy figure. And then he's gone, and Paul's trying to step up, and he even shows up with a beard that makes him look older, and it's all very, and he's trying his best, but you know, Lennon sort of he doesn't have any songs, and he's not really inspired. He's sort of waiting for inspiration to hit. And George clearly is like, I got a sack full of songs, and you motherfuckers don't care. And then Ringo, had a couple like really bad song ideas that they indulged him on, and so it's just great. I mean, first of all, it's beautifully restored. It just looks incredible. And then it's poignant, to see Linda live again and photographing Paul and how much in love they were, and watching John and Paul clown over old rock and roll songs and stuff. I've only gotten to watch episode one, and they made it clear. All the Beatles made it clear throughout that first installment that they hated being in that film studio. The acoustics were terrible. It was cold. It was big and empty, and so I'm looking forward to. I think in part two they move into the studio at Apple on Seville Row. So I mean I remember from the original film things instantly got better. For one thing, they were in a familiar setting, and then of course Billy Preston shows up to play piano, and as Lennon has said, they were always on best behavior when they had company. If Eric Clapton was playing with them or Billy Preston was playing with them, they were all like, "Oh, that's very nice." They'd be nice to each other. So that would be interesting and fun. No, it's really interesting because all they really had for "Don't Let Me Down" was the chorus and the sort of one verse and a middle eight, and Lennon, and they weren't even connected. Lennon was just sort of trying to find the thread. Same thing with "I've Got a Feeling," because all McCartney really had was the chorus and the big screaming bridge, but they kept rehearsing it, knowing that, I guess from years of playing together, knowing that if we just keep playing this thing, it's just going to happen, you know. And it was a classic rock and roll environment in the studio in that as you're writing the song that's supposed to be Paul's song or George's song or Ringo's song, whoever, the roadie, Mal Evans, can throw in a lyric and they go, oh, yeah, that's great, man. It's in. And that's really like, that's how we used to make records, in the mouth was like if guitar tech was walking through the studio and he had a cool idea, it'd be like, hey, man, that's a cool idea. Let's try it. It was, so that was fun to see. Um, it was odd to see like Mal's literally sitting there with a pen waiting for the words to fall out of Paul's mouth, and Paul's just making this shit up as he goes along. And so they really are like in the moment of inspiration, he just got somebody to dictate it instead of you and I would have to write it down ourselves. But you don't say Pat, you know what I mean? Like you just go, yeah, maybe we could find another part for that. It's cool. It's a really cool part, but maybe we could find something else. You know, they were 28. Yeah, they were 28. Although I don't think I would have been in anybody's face about songwriting at 28 even. Yeah, that's passe. That's really like to me. That's harsh, man. But they were tough on each other. They made fun of like Lennon comes in and they're practicing "I Me Mine" and Paul's into it and Ringo's into it and it's really cool. And Mark Rosenbaum says he's not hearing Mike.
I got it. I know what I did. It should be Hear Me Now. That's okay.
So
We've
they
only
so
had.
is it, yeah, I can carry us, dude. I'm interesting enough. I could put words in your mouth and make you interesting. But anyway,
Is that what he
uh,
said? Oh my gosh.
they're doing "I Me Mine," and George just sort of like saw this. He said, "I saw this ballet last night, and I was inspired to do a waltz." And so they're doing a waltz, and Lennon comes in, and they go, "What do you think?" And he goes, "It's a waltz. What are we gonna do with that?" And they're like, "Well, it's a good song." And George is like, "It's a good song," and he literally says to George, "Do you know what kind of music we play here?" I was like, "Whoa, man!
Man. Oh, man.
How hard were y'all trying to get him to quit? For fuck's sake!"
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No shit. That was kind of mean. Um,
That was pretty mean,
that's
you
pretty
know?
damn mean. I was thinking about some of the songs that he wrote at the end, though, too. Like, Something is like one of my favorite Beatles songs. And, you
Oh
know,
man, I gotta say, like, listen to the three of them sing harmony on "Isn't It a Pity?" Now, not to take anything away from George's officially released version on "All Things Must Pass," "All Things Must Pass." The three-part harmony that they did on "All Things Must Pass" hurt my heart a little bit because I was like, oh my god, this should have been on "Let It Be."
right.
It's
So
such a
good.
beautiful song, and with them singing harmony with him, it was gorgeous. But fascinating to see that "Gimme Some Truth" started out as a Lennon and McCartney combination, and then
Uh huh.
wound up on Imagine with Lennon poking fun at McCartney. I'm sick
Right.
to death of mommy's little chauvinist hypocrites, all those little things. Um, so yeah, there was, I think Another Day, there's Paul sitting down at the piano playing Another Day, which didn't appear until like, I think Ram, you know?
Right.
So,
Right. So these ideas just sat there forever, right? Until finally, you're digging through the old tapes, I guess, and going, hey, I had an idea. And we've all done that
right.
before. I've got.
And they sort of knew what was good too. That was the cool part. I read a nice review of it. They said in the early scenes they're tentative, they're rusty, they're a little leery of each other because it's been a tough 18 months with Brian dying and nobody really knows they've been separate. But literally, as the film progresses, you can see them begin to have some fun. Um, George's quitting was very interesting because I couldn't see quite what provoked it. He
Uh
just
huh.
sort of got sick of being there and just calmly
And
put
remember, at
down
that
his
point,
thing.
he was running Apple at that point because Paul and John checked out Remember? And George actually had to deal with the day-to-day at Apple. He was dealing with, because they were trying to bring in new bands and all of that stuff. Remember, they were signing bands and all. So George was left to deal with, I remember reading that George was left to deal with all the bullshit of Apple. So, it's just like, Jesus Christ. Not only have to deal with you knuckleheads, but, I'm the one who's dealing with the business stuff here.
Mark Rosenbaum says George is one of the most underrated writers in rock history, and I agree. The unfortunate thing for George was that he happened to be. Am I still there? Or did I freeze?
No, you're fine. You froze for a second.
The unfortunate thing for George is that he happened to be in a band with the two most brilliant songwriters of his generation, and he was a really great songwriter. But he wasn't the greatest and most prolific songwriting team of his generation. He happened to be in the band with them. And so no matter how good his stuff, it was always lining up behind there to both their egos and their ability to create. They both had massive egos, but they both could deliver the fucking goods every time.
But George had a few songs that I think were as good as, like Gently Weeps, something like we were saying. He had a couple of songs that were easily in the top 10 of the Beatles songs.
Something as easily as good as anything Lennon and McCartney did. Now, granted, Paul McCartney's bass line is an incredible addition to that song.
It certainly is.
But they were a real band. They did that for each other. George added the guitar part for "And I Love Her," bum 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 bum. McCartney was just strumming along. George added what was the hook.
Right.
And that's what you do when you're in a band. You don't think of it until later that that's actually the writing part. You should also be sharing credits because that's writing the song. But anyway, that it was interesting. I can't wait to get into episode 2. And I think in the review I read, they move into Savile Row for episode 2, and George is back, of course, and Billy Preston stops by for a visit and winds up getting pulled in. So I thought that they'd hired him or something, because they're talking about they're in the movie. They're talking about him playing with Ray Charles, and I thought, they're talking about him because they can't wait for him to be there. But the way they were talking was like, no, they just seen him with Ray Charles. So then I read this review, and apparently he just sort of popped in to say hello, and they were like, hey, we need a piano player.
Won't you play piano for us? It's out right now, by the way. My wife just told me that she started to finish up the one that we were watching yesterday, and she's like, the next episode's out. So,
but yeah, it started at midnight last night. It was very hard for me not to wake up at 3 this morning and watch it and lie. Say, no, I waited for you, baby. I didn't watch anything.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing yesterday. I was like going, I could watch it and tell her I didn't watch it. But then
she's a big Beatles fan.
Stuff.
Like if she's watching a Beatles movie, at some point in the movie, she's going to be up and dancing. She's as big a Beatles fan as I am almost. And so it's a big deal and that's fun when you're watching it with somebody who's a big Beatles fan. If I was watching it with Luis, I would have had to strangle him or get into a boxing match with him.
Yeah, I know. What about watching it with oh my God, what's his name? He used to be a guitar player, John in Cowboy Mouth for a minute. The one who does the podcast. No, the one who does the podcast.
Pretis.
The Beatles. Pretis, yes.
John Pretis. It's fun to talk Beatles with Jonathan. Even long before we had the podcast, I had him come out to sing on my records. The first time it was my Everything That Ends Begins Again record, and we were doing a song. Everything That Ends Begins Again, that I had written to sort of pay homage to Lennon's style of songwriting. And it was real dreamy, Beatlesque. And he came in to the studio to sing harmonies. He just got it right away. And then sang the harmonies the other Beatles would have sung, both the high and the low harmonies, and added so much. And then brought him out again to sing with Ray Ganeshaw and Justin Mosaw to be the background harmony singers on the record One More Trip Around the Sun. And he was flying back from meeting with a manager in LA, and on the flight back he was listening to the demos, and he was on a legal pad. He showed up to the studio with a blueprint written out in hand in sequence of what harmonies needed to be done, where and how. It was the most organized thing I've ever seen. And talking about the Beatles with him, he's young. I mean, he's 20 years younger than me, but he's so into it and so knowledgeable, and I would love to watch the movie with somebody like that, but when you're old, you don't get together with your guy friends to do shit like that. When you're in your 20s, you get together with your guy friends to watch a movie or something. When you're old, you're both like, come over here. No, you come over here. Fuck it.
I guess you heard that Andre's trying to do something, right? Some kind of Beatles.
Andre's doing Oh yeah, they applied to the Threadheads for a grant,
Yeah.
and they actually asked me if I would sing a song on it. And in my mind, I was like thinking, I really would like to do like Johnny Cash did within my life. I'd like to take and do For No One down an octave, because
Right.
it's such a beautiful, sad ballad, and to
It's
give it
beautiful.
the rich, deep baritone gravitas that Johnny Cash gave in my life, I thought that would be cool. But they didn't ask me what I wanted to do. They said, "Oh, we thought we'd have you sing with a little help from my friend." And I thought, well, suddenly I'm fucking Ringo. How did this happen to me, man?
Right. You're like, thanks. I think.
You know, struggle with a little dystonia for 3 years. Next thing you know, you're Ringo.
Next thing you know, you're Ringo singing just a half of the lines, and everybody else is kind of filling in for you, singing the rest of them. Right. It's
Yeah,
a great
that was
tune,
nice.
though.
It's a great tune, and it's nice. It's nice of those fellas to want to include me.
Right.
They're all young men, and it's great to be included.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, you reached out to me just asking if I'd be interested in doing any mixing on it. And
Have you seen the Walrus, by the way? Their band, their Beatles cover band.
I mean, just the
Dude,
time we came out and played with you guys.
I meant to call you last Saturday, was it? Or Friday? I can't remember which. Saturday, I think. They played on somebody's porch on Constant Street, uptown, like Jefferson Avenue, not too far from your house. And I was going to call you, and I thought, well, I don't know if this is open to the public. I got invited through a friend. I don't know. So I show up, and the neighborhood has blocked off the street with cones. And there's like 250 people in the street with lawn chairs, having drinks and partying and eating food and waiting for the
Nice.
band. And when they came out, they were incredible. Dave Pomerleau, who I've worked with a few times in Wright Brothers projects, but never really tuned into his complete talent. Incredible singer, like singing McCartney shit right there in key. Of course, Priedus is just amazing singer. I mean, he's like a young John Thomas Griffith and a young Paul McCartney rolled into
So
one. It's
Priedus is with him
incredible.
too. Gotcha.
And Andre is on drums, and he's playing drums and fucking piano at the same time. He's playing drums and piano at the same time.
Wow.
My brain
Wow.
exploded trying to think about it. His feet are going, his hands going on the rhythm, and the left hand's playing the chords on the piano. And I'm just like, what did he just do?
Wow. Wow. So it sounds great. Obviously, the thing that they're doing is
Yeah,
very cool.
it's pretty great. I mean, they know their songs, and then the guitar player Felix was really excellent. He had the parts nailed. They did extended jams on some songs, which, as a true Beatles purist, kind of jarred me a little bit because the Beatles weren't a jam kind of band.
Right.
But I figured they thought Felix was such a good Joe about learning all these short, 8-bar solos. They were letting him have a little fun as a guitar player and extending. It was great. I had a great time watching them. I could see why they sold out Tipitinas. There's a lot of people, a lot of Beatles fans in the world, and when you do that good a job as a tribute band, then you're going to draw some peoples.
We used to do pretty well too. I might ask them if we can ever open up for them because we used to have fun doing those. Pick 10 songs and do it once a year. It was like 10 or 12 songs or whatever.
I
We had a
remember
lot of fun
that.
doing
I remember
those.
didn't y'all do that at the House of Blues with some other
We used to do
bands
that at the
too?
House of Blues, the Top Cats during their Top Cats Beatle Fest or whatever.
Oh yeah, the Beatle Fest. That's right.
So we were more like Andre and them. We took more of a well, we're going to take this song and if the Beatles were alive today and they played it with just the instruments, like the rooftop thing, whereas the Top Cats literally
By
try
the
to
way, I can't wait. The
be a
third
jukebox.
installment, the rooftop concert, is 45 minutes long.
Gotcha. I can't wait for that too. So that's the third episode, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Probably building up to it and doing it. And so that's the way we approached it too, though, right? Treat it like any
I
other
gotta
song.
say, you had to watch it. Going back to the movie, this reviewer wrote, "Now we know who the true villain of Let It Be was. It was Michael Lindsay Hogg." the suggestions he's making. I mean, what a little snot. He's like, at one point, he's trying to get him to go to Tunisia and do it in an amphitheater because we'll fill it with Arabs. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
Well, how are you going to get 2,000 Arabs to come see the Beatles? And even if you could, what does that have to do with any of their connection?
Right.
Ringo's like, we're big in America and England. Let's do something in England, And then so he's like trying to pitch ideas. At one point he goes, maybe a children's hospital. And you could see them all look at him like, what the fuck? And he goes, not with really sick children, but ones that, can sort of be there. And they're just like, That's disgusting, man. Nobody
Right.
said it, but it's like, you know, what about an orphanage? And I'm like, who are you,
So who the
fucking
fuck is this
Scrooge?
guy? Who the fuck is this
What the
guy?
fuck is wrong with you? Go play in the orphanage.
I've never even heard
Like,
his
how
name before.
exploitative would you like this film to be? You know?
Right? Is he the director or something?
Yeah, he was the director
I
of Let
see.
It Be.
So that's
He
what.
was really
Yeah.
young, you know, and he was overwhelmed with being the guy who got to be the director. He many times said, millions of people are waiting for this and they need this and they love you. And, you know, he was clearly a fan, but I mean, those are some crap ideas, man.
Those are some
An
crap
orphanage
ideas.
and a children's hospital, but not for the really sick children. And I was
Right.
like, did he really just say that?
Right. Yeah, that's terrible, terrible ideas. And obviously
And
he was the
Ringo just
villain.
hated Ringo hated the idea of going to Africa, and the guy wouldn't drop it. He kept on talking to Ringo about it. Ringo's like, I'm not doing it. You know,
I'm
why not?
going
Because
to
I don't want.
Africa. Because I don't
Not
want
going to
to.
Africa.
Well, obviously,
wrong?
and then the way they cut the thing together in the end was, you know, that was the other thing. It was obviously he had an agenda when he cut it together, right? I mean,
The Let It Be movie clearly had. Well, in fairness to him, to not just Michael Lindsay hog bash, Peter Jackson in this review I read was saying that when McCartney approached him, it was 57 hours of footage that the Beatles wanted to cut down to a cinema release, so it would have been 2 hours long. And he said, we realized within the first few days that we couldn't do it. There was too much good footage there. And he said, I didn't ask the Beatles, but I went to Disney and asked if they would be interested in a 6-hour, 3-part docuseries. And they immediately jumped on it, immediately offered financing. So when I had it in place, I went back to the Beatles and said, you know, I want to show you what I have. So he showed them 6 hours. And Paul was like, we have to do it this way. This is the way the story has to be told. And then he told them about Disney, and they were all like, great, well done,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But he said, you know, working with the Beatles still have total control over everything. You know,
Yes,
that's how
I
just
bet.
how it is.
just how it
So
is.
he was very careful about it, but he was smart. And he said, you know, if we had cut it down to movie length, then as we show you each day in the studio, that would have been 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
You know, that whole hour of that.
Not to
watching
mention,
them
I
make
mean,
that.
what the first episode was 2.5 hours long, 2 hours and 40. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine, you know, I mean, wow, you know, all I could think is, it would have, gosh, yeah, it wouldn't have touched nearly. You wouldn't have got it if they'd have tried to cut it down.
And
to
he
movie.
he really cleverly included some dialogue that was recorded off the cuff, that some of the fights and some of the discussions, and he uses blurry shots. He sort of uses them over and over too, to make it look like the dialogue is happening in that moment. But it's dialogue between them, and they're having dialogue. It's not the same thing, but it's smartly done, you know, because it allows them to narrate their own film.
Right. And that was the other thing. Like, that was just the video footage was the 50-something hours, right? They still had all of that audio stuff
Something
as well.
like
that.
Yeah, like 200 hours or 100 hours of audio stuff, you know.
Right.
It's incredible.
On top of the video stuff, you know. So, yeah.
I missed what Mark just said. Do you have what Mark just said?
He said the thing that sticks out to me was how young they were at this point. They were younger than my kids are now.
They were 28 years old. They were young men, you know,
They were young men.
and all that goes with being young men. They were young men and in serious love for the first time. You know, John's bringing Yoko, and then Linda comes in partway through, and then Maureen starts showing up because, hey, if the wives are welcome, then I'm coming to hang out too, man.
Right.
So Yoko broke that barrier. It was really fun to see McCartney do experimental jam music with John and Yoko once George quit, you know, and sort of dispel the myth that he was completely against it and looked down on it, because Paul was quite experimental too. You know, he hipped them to a lot of modern art. He hipped them to a lot of avant-garde film. And while John got more into avant-garde music, Paul was aware of it and was capable of diving in. So the frustration of George leaving and them just jamming like they were fucking Nirvana sounded awesome. And then she starts doing that. And instead of them getting uncomfortable or even exchanging a look with anybody, Paul's got his bass back right into the, you know, speaker, making it feed back. And it's awesome,
Right.
you know, it's great fun.
Yeah, no, you know, one of the sessions that comes to mind is the session where they did the Ballad of John and Yoko and Come Together. And Paul just kind of came in that day. John came in. He came in. I think it was just the two of them. and they worked.
I don't know about Come Together, but it's definitely just the two of them on the Ballad of John and Yoko.
I think they worked on
because
it kind of in the same time. Because
I
remember
think,
Paul came up with the hook for "Come Together." Like "Come Together" was just some chords that he was doing this thing over, and Paul comes up with the hook, and suddenly, then it's a song. Then it went to the next level. That whole, whatever, boom, 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 that whole high.
It was really
thing.
fun to watch. They really, even if they're immersed in their own ideas, if an idea pops through the room that they like, they're like, their antenna are up, and they're like, what was that again? And Lennon starts singing about having a hard on in the middle of I've Got a Feeling, and it starts out as a joke. It starts out as him just being Lennon, just being an adolescent fucking kid, and then George is like, that's really good, and then he gets more serious about it. He takes that hard on and puts in Hard Year, and you start watching him form the other part of the song, the counterpoint melody to the song, which began as a joke.
Right.
And then watching Paul desperately trying to squeeze harmonies into Don't Let Me Down, because that's what they're used to doing. And some guys
But
just
his harmony
have to
works
sing.
so well, I mean, it's such a cool
I hated
thing.
those harmonies.
Did you?
I'm in love for the first time. He's in love for the first. I was like, come on, guy. That's.
But he didn't do that. That's
Make
not
up-
the original. That's not the version that made it on the record. They just do a tight harmony on.
Right.
on,
But in the film, they do
Gotcha.
that.
Right. He's doing the answer thing. Yeah.
And McCartney's really working it hard for several scenes, and then he's like to Lennon, what do you think? And then George flat out says, I don't think it works at all. I was like, thank you, George.
So
Thank
George
you
got a
for
little
saying
payback.
something.
He got a little payback for the passe chord
They
lines.
were tough with each other. It wasn't just McCartney.
Right.
I mean, literally, I don't think it works at all. It's
And you're right.
terrible.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's terrible.
It didn't have anything.
You were mentioning that they were really good at, like, there was some talk of because there was a little run after the White Album where there was a lot of McCartney songs that kept getting picked as singles. Hey Jude, Paperback Writer. There was a whole little run where just Paul was on fire. But they did, as a business, they always picked the best songs. It didn't matter who wrote it. They didn't care. That was kind of one of the things that they talked about in one of the books I read. Just it didn't matter who wrote it. We're in a business. We're here to make money. What's the best song? And egos didn't get in the way when it came to that. Even after Brian was gone.
With McCartney, that music, of all the four of them, music was his life and still is. Like that. Saw a special on the BBC a few years ago where he had a small audience in a recording studio, and he just calmly goes, I'm going to show you how you write a song. He goes, first you think of a beat. And he sits down with the drums and he lays down a beat. And he goes, and then you're going to need a bass line that's going to grab, And he just comes up with one on the spot and layers all this, and then he makes a song right in front of him. And his life is music. Whereas with Lennon and Linda and his family, but I mean, as far as his creative life was music. Lennon got into art. He got into avant-garde film. He got heavily into being politically an activist. All time-consuming thing. Music no longer was the world to him. And Harrison had found spirituality, and music was no longer the world for him, which is why he couldn't take the fights in the studio anymore. He was already jamming with Eric Clapton and the Stones and some of the greatest musicians of his day. And then he comes back into the room, and he's the 15-year-old kid again who's getting looked down on by the older brothers.
Right.
So,
good point.
You are who you were when you met your friends. That's what happens when you have old friends.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's hard to change people's perception of you. Once you kind of, you're right. I mean, that just goes at everything, not just even in music, but like, think about even your job or whatever like that. If you come in at a certain level, they always see you at that level, even if you grow past that. A lot of times, people still see you at that level.
Right. I recently had an old friend upset with me and accused me of thinking of him as a record store clerk and a sound man, and I'm past all that. And I was just like, wow, yeah, you did that shit 30 years ago. I haven't thought of you in that way in 30 years. You're my friend and my drummer when I can use you or whatever, but I've never thought of you like that. I mean, I'm sorry that's in your version of you.
yeah, that sounded a little bit like their version of them, actually. Yeah.
Well, usually when somebody's mad and yelling stuff at you, they're yelling at themselves.
Yeah. How's Johnny, by the way? How'd Johnny do yesterday? You said you went and saw your brother.
Yeah, he had a hernia operation.
I did not. We had
yeah,
talked.
But he's a little ginger still, walking around, but it was a beautiful celebration. Of course, his wife Abby is a fantastic host, and so there was just laughter. And my nephew, my brother Joe's son Joseph, had his first child, and he and his wife came, little tiny, 2-month-old, and all the women were taking pictures with him, and
Of course.
couldn't get it out of my hands, So it was sweet. And then Allison's son Adam fixed us dinner, and it was very lovely. He and his girlfriend had gone to great lengths to make the perfect setting. He's got this beautiful garden that he's the gardener of, and they set us up a beautiful table at the koi pond with candlelight and flowers, and his brother and his girlfriend, Brian, and his girlfriend Liz were there, and it was just lovely, and it was his first time he'd had his mom to his house for an adult dinner, and
Nice.
it was important to him, and they both pulled it off beautifully.
Nice. So you had a nice. And meanwhile, the whole time you're sitting there, you're like, "Oh, this is all great. I'm enjoying the moment." But God damn it, the Beatles waiting for me at home.
You know what? There was the tiniest little nudge, but it wasn't like that.
I know.
Because we had
I'm
talked
kidding.
about it in the day, and Allison was like, I don't want to rush to visit with my son so we can go home and watch the Beatles. I'm like, but trust me, your son will be done with us long before we're done with him.
Right.
Because, he likes his private time. And sure enough, as it started getting dark, and it wasn't practical anymore, we were outside, and there were mosquitoes starting to come around, and he just calmly was like, so everyone help me clean up, and that began the process of leaving. And I knew that he would give us a signal when it was time, and he did. And we were both still wide awake. It was like 5 or whatever when we got home, and we watched the first installment. It was awesome. It was beautiful.
I'll tell you what, you didn't miss nothing with that Saints game. We were.
I tuned into the
at my
game at one
mom's.
point. She had to go use the bathroom and wanted to make us a snack, so I turned it on, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm watching the Beatles, man."
They're so injured. They got
They're-
half the
they're-
team
I-
left.
I was saying to Allison, in the history of watching the Saints, I don't know that I've ever seen this many injuries on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's
Out of
ridiculous.
four starting offensive linemen, they have one. The starting running back Kamara's out. The backup Mark Ingram is out. They had to pull a guy off of injured reserve to come and play running back.
Right.
The starting tight end is out. The starting wide receiver is out. The
Couple of starting
strong
wide
safety-
receivers are out. There's a handful of starting wide receivers that are out.
Yeah.
And then
Davenport's out.
Davenport's out, right? I mean,
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's out. I mean, he's the best guy on defense, besides Demario Davis. So decimated is the correct word. They are decimated by injury. And if they win another game, it will be a tribute to Sean Payton's ability to coach, because they're
Right.
playing guys, they're pulling it off the street.
I mean, the field goal kicker. I mean, there's a couple of games you can point directly to bad field goal kicking we lost this year. I mean, the Atlanta
Yeah,
game,
Sean's got
bad
bad
field goal
kickers.
He's got bad luck with
those.
He's never had good luck with him. Like, it's always been a
Lutz was
thing
the
for
best
him.
we ever had under Peyton, and then he
Yep.
goes and tears his ass. Yeah. I actually knew when Lutz went down. I was like, oh man, Sean's got bad luck with kickers.
I know we've only had this
It's
guy for a
not
few
gonna be
years.
pretty, man.
He's finally the guy. He's finally the guy. And during training camp, I mean, who does that happen to? So
Yeah, there was so many things that were sort of heartbreaking about it. Jameis was such a question mark, and when he went down, he was 14-2. I mean, he was 6-1 as a starter and had thrown 14 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He was
he
having
was
a
playing
season.
well. He was playing well. Yes,
He was playing well. He was playing the kind of football that could bring us to the playoffs.
absolutely.
Might not have made the Super Bowl, but we definitely were going to make a strong run at the playoffs. And I'm not knocking Trevor Siemian. He's talented enough to be quarterback in the NFL, and I'm not.
Right.
And maybe if he had some weapons in there with him, he could make a better show of it. But it's fucking brutal, man. And then
it's funny because I do think
how
he's
can they
better.
take?
He's better for Peyton's offense in some ways, just because he is a guy like Breeze who's going to get the ball.
Stays in the pocket and tries to get. But like Taysom would be good at quarterback at this point. But who would he throw to if he wasn't out there? He would have to throw the ball and then run out there and catch it himself. It'd be insane.
Right. Not
It's
to mention,
Taysom Hill to Taysom Hill.
To
What a
Taysom
pass
Hill.
that was.
Right. And I mean, he hasn't even been playing him because I think he's still having some foot problems, right? They said.
Yeah, I think he's
still
got
having-
turf toe. They keep on mentioning his toe.
Gotcha.
And that sounds like turf toe. And that's not going to go away this season if he's got turf toe.
Gotcha.
And I think the Saints the Saints need to address how crappy their field is.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know too many teams that play on that chopped up rubber shit anymore like we do. And the players aren't getting traction and they're tearing ligaments. And I just think that the Saints field is from last century and needs to be overhauled.
Maybe that is part of the problem. Maybe they need to figure that part of it out, you know? Drew Brees actually called the game last night. That was the other thing. It was kind of...
Yeah, you know, I had my issues with Drew politically, but he was a great quarterback. He's a Hall of Famer, and I was glad he got to come back to a full Superdome and take the bow so richly deserved in front of that crowd. He gave us a Super Bowl. He gave us great years of football. We expected to win. And growing up, you never expected the Saints to win. You watched the game at first with the faint hope that they're going to win. Yeah, we might win this one. And then when it started going bad, you just watched it to get drunk and laugh at the error that we were, you know. So he gave us a great career, and he deserved to come back to a full dome and have a bow.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. I mean, you always figured you were in it when Drew was in the game. It didn't matter what the score was. You always knew you had a shot when Drew was playing.
Absolutely.
It's like, we got a shot. We could win this game, you know.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, all right, Mikey. We've been at it an hour because we started 20 minutes late, and now it's 10:20.
And now it's 10:20. So we have been an hour, and we did do a big Beatles. It was a big Beatles, you know.
Now, what's the thing? So I don't have to keep the few people that do watch us in mystery. Are you working next week? Are we going to do shows next week?
Let's do some shows next week.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday shows.
We'll do Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows. At this point, I got nothing going on next week. Look at that, guys. We're gonna.
And then you'll be working again, and that'll be the end of it. I'm kind of liking this though, because at first we were all about like, we don't really care if we curse on this thing. We're the producers, and then we were like, we don't care if we're late. It's us, you know. What does it matter? There's only a few people watching. Now we don't even care if we have a schedule. We'll just do it when we have time.
We might. If we got time, we'll do it.
A few of our fans and listeners will show up, and, you know, that's great. That was fun. Go back to your job. Make some money.
Go back, make some money. That's right. I think the following week I got to run to L.A. on Wednesday, but we'll do next week, and we'll just play it by ear, like you said.
Do you need an assistant?
You want to come? I'll see if I can get you a ticket. Come hang out with me. Go and do an award show.
Oh, that sounds great.
It should be fun.
I love LA.
Dink and dunk. Yeah, I'm flying in on Tuesday. I think I'm flying home on Thursday. It's a one-day show. So.
Oh wow, good for you.
In and out.
I like
but
money's awesome.
Next week we're wide. Yes, but next week we're wide open. We'll do this together next week. And thanks you guys for tuning in. Sorry we ran a little bit late today, but like I said earlier, that you couldn't hear me. It was for my daughter. We're gonna go see her tomorrow. We're gonna go hang out with her, and he was sending some applause. By the way,
so she just went back to college, and she's now going. You're going to visit her in college.
Well, she's got games this weekend in Jackson, so we're going to go to Jackson and watch her play Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, that's
she's
awesome.
Having a big season.
Watch her play ball.
Yeah, she's having a big season. She's averaging a double every game. Like,
nice.
She's 15-something points a game. You know, she's doing really well. So
nice, man.
She's having fun. We're going to go watch her, hang out, and it'll be fun.
Great. All right, buddy.
You
it's
take
great
care,
talking
man.
to you.
You
see you
too.
Monday then.
See you Monday, homie. All right, bye.
Well, I used to keep my money in a cookie jar. It was shaped like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, her hair is as black as an alleyway, and it used to be red, and it used to be blonde. Truth is, her hair changes color all the time. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. I'll have another cup of coffee if you don't mind. Well, I'm staring at her shoulder, but it's not what I see when I hear two fellas fighting in the booth across from me. So I wipe away the ashes from an empty counter seat, And I wished I wasn't homesick, I wish I was asleep. Well, I hold her like a blanket up against my chin, and I need her like I need another pack of chewing gum. Well, we used to be like that, but now we're like this all